Imagine a town where silence isn't quiet, where every thought you have is no longer your own, where the walls don't just have ears, they have minds. What would you do if your deepest fears, your darkest secrets were no longer hidden? This is the story of Branlowe, the town that hears your thoughts, and once it knows you, there's no escape. Part 1. Arrival in Branlowe. I've visited a lot of towns in my life, some tucked behind snow-capped mountains, others hidden in desert canyons. But Branlowe is something else entirely. I should have turned back the moment I passed. The crooked sign nailed to a leaning post on the forest road. Welcome to Branlowe, population variable. That word. Variable. It sat wrong in my gut. Like something meant to be funny, except no one in Branlowe seems to laugh. The woods leading in were thick, almost prehistoric. Moss draped from the trees like hanging skin, and fog clung to the earth, like it didn't know how to let go. My GPS went out miles back, so I was driving on instinct. And those damn EEG spikes we picked up from this region, spikes with no explanation, like synchronized brain activity pulsing from a single spot. I'm a neuroscientist, rational, skeptical, trained to believe in patterns, not premonitions. But even I couldn't explain the electromagnetic echoes we picked up from Branlowe. Brainwaves, human. Brainwaves, coming from a population so small it barely appeared on census data. That's why I came. I didn't expect the silence. It wasn't that Branlowe was quiet, it was still. Like sound had been bled out of the place. No birdsong, no cars. Even the wind moved around it like it knew not to enter. When I pulled up to the inn, an old Victorian covered in ivy and candles glowing behind its windows, the innkeeper was already standing outside, waiting. He was an older man, thin as a scarecrow, with sunken eyes and a smile that didn't reach them. "You're here," he said before I'd even stepped out of the car. I paused. "Yes, I'm Dr. Iris Holloway." He nodded. "We've prepared your room." I didn't tell him my name. I know I didn't. I'd made the reservation under a pseudonym, standard protocol when investigating anomalous cognitive events. Yet here he was, saying my name like it was his own. He didn't ask for payment, just handed me a brass key and led me into the inn. It smelled like wax and damp paper. The wallpaper curled like it was trying to peel itself away from the walls, and the candles, they were everywhere. No electric lights, just flickering flames that cast too many shadows for the number of people present. As we climbed the creaking stairs, he said, "You'll find the desk drawer empty. You don't write in this town." I stopped. I didn't ask about a desk. He didn't respond, just smiled that same hollow smile and walked me to my room. He opened the door without a sound, no hinges squealing, no latch clicking, just silence. Room 3. Candle on the table, mirror on the wall. Too large, like it belonged in a ballroom. And a bed that looked freshly made but somehow used. Like someone had just slipped out of it a moment before I arrived. I set my bag down, turned to thank him, but he was already halfway down the hallway. I didn't hear his footsteps. I didn't hear anything. When I tried to call my assistant back at the university, nothing. No bars, no signal. The Wi-Fi network was locked, but there was no password prompt, just an empty connection that mocked me with its presence. I turned to my notes, trying to shake the chill that had settled into my bones. I opened my laptop, pulled up the EEG readings we'd tracked remotely from this region. The spikes were centered here, a geographic anomaly of neural synchronization, patterns you shouldn't see outside of controlled environments, and even then only with implants. Not in a village this rural. And then something strange happened. My laptop keyboard began to type. By itself. At first I thought I'd leaned on it, but the letters spelled out my name. Slowly, deliberately, IRISI slammed the lid shut. I told myself it was a malfunction, a driver glitch, static interference from the old wiring in the building, anything but what it felt like, a presence. Not in the room, no, worse than that, in my head. I tried to sleep, but dreams pressed against the edges of my thoughts. Whispers I couldn't quite make out, always just beneath understanding. Like a crowd muttering behind a wall. I woke up once to find the candle still burning. Wax spilled over the table, congealing in strange radial patterns, like a nervous system frozen in time. And then I saw something that made my skin tighten. The mirror across from the bed, it was fogged, as though someone had breathed on it, but the room was cold. And I hadn't moved. I walked to the glass, heart pounding, and wiped it clean. Written in the condensation, faint but unmistakable, was a single word: welcome. I stared at it for a long time, trying not to panic. When I turned away, I caught a glimpse of movement in the mirror. Not behind me, inside the reflection. The room, reversed and flickering with candlelight. And standing there was the innkeeper, not moving, just watching. His mouth didn't move, but I heard him, clear as day inside my skull. "You're already part of us." I spun around. The room was empty. No one there, just the candle, still burning. I didn't sleep again that night. In the morning, I came downstairs to find a cup of coffee already made for me on the dining room table. Still warm. I hadn't asked for it, and the innkeeper wasn't anywhere in sight. I drank it anyway, because part of me already knew. They heard me thinking about it. Part 2. The silence isn't silence. I thought the night in Branlowe had been strange, but the morning? The morning was something else entirely. I woke up with my head pounding and a strange taste in my mouth, metallic, like blood. The candle had burned itself down to a stub, but the air still smelled heavy, like it was soaked with some unseen presence. As I dressed, I tried to push the unease away. I had work to do. I headed toward the clinic, an old brick building on the edge of town, the only sign of modern life here. The road leading to it was overgrown, barely used, but the building itself seemed kept up, as if someone was waiting for me there. Inside, it was cold and sterile, but no one spoke. The receptionist, an unnervingly calm woman with pale skin, gestured toward a small waiting room. The other patients sat silently, eyes locked on me, or maybe through me. I couldn't tell. I set up my laptop on the examination table, hoping to record and analyze anything unusual. That's when I started to hear it. Whispers. Soft, almost imperceptible murmurs that seemed to echo my own thoughts. At first, I thought it was the wind. But no, these whispers repeated what I was thinking. Did I lock the car? What if they're watching me? This place is wrong. The whispers weren't random. They were my intrusive thoughts. Those guilty, anxious little ideas you try to bury but never can. And now the town was echoing them back to me over and over. I rubbed my temples trying to shut it out. But it followed me everywhere. Down the hallways, in the clinic, even in the silence between conversations that never happened. I looked at my laptop screen. Something strange was happening there too. The documents I'd left open, my research notes, EEG data, personal reflections, were changing, auto-filling, sentences forming on their own, as if someone, or something, was typing in real time. Words I hadn't written, but that made perfect sense in the context of my thoughts. "You're not alone. We hear you." They already know. My heart hammered in my chest. I shoved the laptop away and decided to explore the clinic. Down a narrow hallway, I found a room filled with EEG scans, dozens of them, pinned like trophies to a bulletin board. I studied them, brow furrowed. Every single resident had identical brainwave patterns, a perfect synchronized rhythm, as if they were all connected, linked through something beyond biology. Then, the door creaked. I turned, startled. A young girl stood there, her eyes wide and unblinking, her lips pressed into a thin line. Without a word, she stepped forward and handed me a folded note. I unfolded it slowly. In neat handwriting, it read, "They already know why you came." My pulse quickened. I looked up to ask her what she meant, but she was gone. Only silence remained. Or, so I thought, because the whispers had started again, closer now, inside my mind, repeating. Part 3. The collective mind. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, not just by the people of Branlowe, but by something deeper, something that threaded through the very air I breathed. Driven by a mixture of dread and curiosity, I found myself standing before the old library. Its facade was weathered, windows dusty, and the door sealed with a heavy iron lock. But the lock was only symbolic. A side door, cracked just a few inches open, beckoned me. Inside, the air was thick with the musk of rotting paper and forgotten secrets. The rows of books towered above me like silent sentinels. I wandered deeper until I found the narrow staircase leading down into the basement, an area clearly off limits to outsiders. The steps groaned beneath my weight. The darkness swallowed me whole. In the dim, flickering light of my flashlight, I discovered a small alcove, littered with dusty journals and faded manuscripts. Their pages yellowed, ink smudged with time. But the words burned with a terrible clarity. I read, breath hitching as I uncovered the truth. In 1842, Branlowe had been a normal town, quiet, isolated, but ordinary. That year, the townspeople had performed a ritual unlike any other, a ritual where they shed their mouths, where speech was abandoned, and a greater power was invited in. The journals describe the ritual as an exchange, giving up their individual voices and minds, surrendering to a collective consciousness, a mind shared by all. The price? Their selves. They invited something ancient and hungry, something rooted beneath the earth itself, like a vast, sprawling root system, pulsating with dark intelligence. Since then, Branlowe wasn't just a town, it was a single organism. One mind, one will. I shivered as I read about the consequences. The townspeople could hear each other's thoughts perfectly, their emotions linked and blended like colors bleeding into water. But there was no room for dissent, no tolerance for doubt. Skeptics and outsiders were either driven away or absorbed. I glanced around, suddenly aware of how quiet the library had become. The air felt charged, electric with unspoken menace. I felt my own thoughts twisting in my head, the skepticism and analytic reasoning I'd always relied on suddenly alien and dangerous here. I was disrupting their unity. I could almost hear the collective mind turning its gaze toward me, silent but piercing. They were beginning to fear me. As I closed the journal, the whispers began again, low and urgent, this time full of warning. Doubt poisons the hive. Skepticism breeds chaos. She must be silenced. I tried to steady my breath. I told myself it was just my imagination, but deep down, I knew it wasn't. Because then the room shifted. The shadows stretched, lengthening toward me like fingers. I felt something unseen brush against my mind, a probing, invasive touch. I clutched my head, fighting to hold onto my own thoughts, but the voices pressed harder, overlapping, crowding out my mind. They didn't want me here, and they would do anything to keep their unity intact. I had crossed a line. Now the town was waking up, and I was their enemy. Part 4. You're not alone in there. The whispers. They had grown louder. What started as faint, unsettling murmurs had become a violent storm raging inside my mind. Every thought I tried to claim as my own was answered, interrupted, twisted, by voices I didn't recognize, but that somehow felt part of the town itself. I was no longer alone in my own head. I paced my room in the inn, a candle flickering against the oppressive darkness. The silence that had once suffocated me was now shattered by a cacophony of voices. Why are you here? You don't belong. Let us in. Why do you resist? They spoke over one another, clamoring, chaotic. I tried to think, just think. But the moment, I formed a sentence in my mind. Another voice cut in, answering before I could finish. Every memory I tried to recall was no longer mine alone. They sifted through my past, plucking at moments like ripe fruit. I was helpless to stop them. One night, in desperation, I pulled out the notebook I'd brought, my journal. Writing had been a lifeline before, a way to hold on to my sanity. I scrawled words furiously. They are inside me. They watch me. I am losing control. Later, I glanced up from my writing and noticed something that sent a cold chill through me. Scratched into the peeling wallpaper just beside my bed were the same words, the exact same sentence, etched deep and fresh as if someone had taken a blade to the walls. I staggered back, my heart hammering. Had I done that? No, I was sure. It had to be someone or something else. That night, as I lay shivering beneath threadbare sheets, I heard the softest rustling outside my window. I dared not move. Through the pale moonlight, I saw them, the townspeople, standing silently in the cold, a circle around the inn, their faces hidden in shadows, their eyes fixed on my window. They didn't speak, they didn't move, but their presence was suffocating, as if their thoughts spilled through the glass and into my room, and the voices inside me, they multiplied. Where once there was a few, now there were dozens of entities clamoring for control. One moment I'd think of my mother, her face flickering in my mind, and 1,000 whispered versions of her voice would answer back, twisting her memory into something sinister. I clenched my fists, desperate to push them away. But the harder I fought, the stronger they became. It was as if the town itself had swallowed me whole, digesting my mind, reshaping me in its own image. The line between me and them blurred. I was losing myself, and in that moment, I understood something terrifying. They weren't just hearing my thoughts, they were stealing them. The more I resisted, the more they devoured. I screamed silently, trapped in a prison of my own mind. Outside, the circle of faces remained. Silent, watchers of a soul slipping away. The town was no longer just a place. It was a living hive, a darkness growing inside me, multiplying, consuming, and I, Dr. Iris Holloway, was becoming its next vessel. Part 5. What Branlowe Buried. The forest behind Branlowe was dense, tangled, a knot of ancient trees and choking underbrush that seemed to swallow light whole. I wasn't sure how I knew where to go. It was as if the town itself guided me. A whisper, or rather a collective pull from the hive mind that had become my prison and my prison guards. I followed the vision in my mind's eye. Jagged, flickering images of a small clearing, sunless, choked with dead leaves. A place where the earth was soft, unnatural. A place where something hid beneath the surface. The path was overgrown, thorny branches clawing at my skin. My breath came in short bursts, heart hammering not from exertion but from something darker. A growing dread in the pit of my stomach. And then I found it. The cemetery, old and forgotten. The headstones cracked and tilting, their inscriptions, weathered to illegibility. I knelt beside a patch of disturbed earth darker than the rest. Something was buried here, but not a body. No, this was something else. I grabbed a shovel from my pack, a precaution I'd taken after the visions began, and began to dig. The soil was soft and wet, clinging to the blade like thick mud. My hands trembled as I unearthed roots. But these were no ordinary roots. They twisted and pulsed thick and sinewy as if alive. Veins of dark sap coursed through their flesh-like tendrils. The roots writhed beneath my fingers, breathing in a rhythm that matched my own ragged heartbeat. I recoiled, heart pounding in terror. A voice rose in my mind, soft, ancient, collective. We are the roots of your mind, the seed of unity, the hunger beneath your thoughts. I stared in disbelief. This was the source, the thing that had bound the town together, not just reading minds, not just hearing, but consuming, eating identity, swallowing individual thought, and replacing it with one endless, writhing consciousness. Stumbled back toward the clearing's edge, my reflection caught in a small, still pool of water. But it wasn't my reflection anymore. It flickered, shifting like a broken mirror. At one moment, my face showed fear. then confusion, then something alien, a cruel, twisted smile that wasn't mine. I blinked. My reflection mimicked emotions I didn't feel. My thoughts, my true self, felt slippery, melting away under their weight. Each moment, I lost more of who I was, replaced by fragments of the town's many voices. Voices overlapping, insistent, drowning out my own mind's quiet. I realized then the horrifying truth. Branlowe wasn't just a town of people. It was a parasite, a monstrous root feeding on identity itself. And it had claimed me. I was no longer just a visitor. I was becoming a part of it. The earth shifted beneath my feet. The roots pulsed in time with the endless hive mind, ready to pull me deeper into their dark embrace. And as the sun disappeared behind the twisted trees, I understood. There was no escape, only surrender. Part 6. The Last Voice. The forest was no sanctuary. At first I thought I could outrun it, escape Branlowe, break free from the oppressive mind that had swallowed my thoughts, my memories, my very self. But the trees betrayed me. Every path I took, every desperate sprint deeper into the woods, circled me back to the same place, the town square. No matter how fast I ran, no matter how far, the woods twisted and shifted, reshaping themselves to trap me. A labyrinth, designed by a mind older than time. Breathless, soaked with sweat, my legs burning, I stumbled into the square as the sun dipped beneath the horizon. The townspeople were there, every one of them, standing silent, still, like statues carved from shadow and bone. Their eyes fixed on me, but their mouths were sealed shut. No words, no noise, just a perfect, terrifying silence. I looked around, desperate to scream. I opened my mouth. Nothing, no sound. My voice was gone. I was mute. But inside my mind, the screams raged on. You cannot leave. You belong to us. You are one of us now. I clutched my head, trying to push the voices away, but they were inside me, multiplying, consuming. I reached for my journal one last time. My hand shook as I scribbled the final words. The truth I could no longer deny. There is peace in silence. There is safety in unity. I am them now. I closed the book. The faces in the square seemed to soften, their eyes empty yet knowing. The whispers drifted through the air. And then as my vision blurred and darkness crept in, I saw my reflection in a broken mirror resting against a nearby wall. It was my face, gone but not mine anymore. Blank, hollow, devoid of fear or hope. And then the whisper came, faint but clear, like a breath against my ear. You thought too loudly. The screen fades to black. Silence. And then, the faintest whisper, a voice that could be mine or could be them. You are home. If the silence of Branlowe still lingers in your mind, don't let the story end here. There are more shadows waiting to be uncovered in our other tales. Click on the next video to dive deeper into the darkness. And if you enjoyed this journey into the unknown, please hit that like button, share with fellow thrill seekers, and subscribe for more chilling stories from Haunted Echoes. Thanks for listening. Until next time, stay curious, but beware what you think.